Welcome to With You, where we seek to go deeper in our relationship together with God. Because even when we're not with you, we're with you. I'm your host, Phoebe, and since today is Thursday, we are joined by our first ever special guest, Toby. And Toby wears a lot of hats around here. He is a small group leader in HSM. He's also the student ministries worship coordinator, and he has been the tech brains behind this With You podcast operation adventure. And we are just so glad that Toby is here to share some of his experience with us. Welcome, Toby.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So this whole week, we've been talking about this truth that in God's kingdom, to succeed is to serve. Toby, I want to hear from you how you've learned that success looked like serving.
Yeah. Well, let me first off start by saying something that you're going to be like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why are they having him talk about this? But by saying that this is something I'm just not good at. I'm not accepting that I'm not good at that and not wanting to grow in it, but just naturally, something that I just struggle with so much is being prideful and wanting the attention and the glory for things. And that is not how Christ calls me to live as his servant. So those are my credentials to start off, but want to talk a little bit about how that has played out and how I have been growing in that, especially in the context of leading worship. Many of you students don't know this probably because I was a student when this started, but I started leading worship here at ARBOR Road in sometime in high school, middle of high school. And I had been wanting to lead worship before that even, but I wasn't allowed to, which looking back, I needed to grow in humility before I started doing that. But that was already my frustrations with it at the beginning. And then from there, once we finally had student worship auditions, I came and I auditioned and I was really excited about it. And I thought that I was signing up to lead my peers in high school in worship. And then came to find out that we were actually going to be the band for kids, for first through fifth graders, which was another thing that I was like, wait, what? This is not what I signed up for. This is kind of frustrating. And then from there, like even eventually I got to lead worship for my peers in high school. And even then there were things that I wanted to happen that weren't happening. There was I wanted to be recognized for what I was doing in that, and it wasn't happening. And even now, leading worship, I lead worship all the time, but I play acoustic guitar a lot for main service, and I'm mostly just behind the scenes, just kind of playing. And that's an important role, but it's not necessarily what I would have myself do all the time. And the thing about that though is that I know I need to grow in this so much because I see in scripture that this is not Christ's heart. As we've been talking about throughout this week, the servant leadership style of Jesus is his heart. His heart is for people. He is gentle and lowly in his heart. And we talked about yesterday in Ephesians 2, the verse that I actually went through is something that my parents would preach to me all growing up, and I still hear it from time to time. But to not consider yourself higher than others, but in humility, or do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others more important or more significant than yourselves. Something that I have heard so much because I need it. I need to grow in that so much. And then even looking a little bit further down in that passage, we see so easily Jesus' heart is that, where he is God, but then in that passage it says that he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but humbled himself to the point of death, even death on a cross. I just think it's crazy that Jesus, who is God, has that heart of humility, and that he is able to delight in his Father enough to go to the cross with joy enough to humble himself, even though he's created all these people who are mocking him. And as I see that, then I have to respond in desiring that humility and servant leadership. And I think one of the ways that I've been growing in that, that's still pretty hard, is even in that time where I'm doing worship in main service, that's just kind of behind the scenes. learning to delight in Jesus just to worship. That even if I'm not mic'd up and actually leading from up front singing, that I'm still singing even off of mic because I'm worshiping. That's something that I've growing into delight in, and something that I want to continue to grow in because I see that in Jesus' heart.
Wow, Toby, thank you for sharing with us, being so vulnerable and honest about the ways that you're even growing right now in serving, in leading by serving. And we see it every day around the office and in HSM, how Toby leads by serving, and he leads our student worship team, and he does that in a way by often stepping aside for other students to grow in their gifts and skills by leading worship. It's so cool that we got to hear from you today. To succeed is to serve. It's such a simple but important truth that we were reminded of this week. This actually wraps up our week of diving into what authority looks like in God's kingdom. This was our first week of the With You podcast. And next week, we'll kick off on Sunday looking at Psalm 100 and starting to unpack who we truly are. We are His. Remember, let's be real with one another and with God as long as it's called today. It was great to be with you. We'll see you next week.